It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders, about to be on his afternoon drive. How are we feeling, Alan?
I'm feeling good. It's bye week. Officially, the Steelers had practice scheduled today and then said, you know what? Nah, we're good. Let's just get out of here. If you are flying somewhere out of Pittsburgh International Airport today, anywhere in the country, probably there's a decent chance there's a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers on your flight. As I just walked through the parking lot. Usually, you get through here at 5:00, and there's still like a lot of players around. Getting treatment, doing extra work in their meeting. This place is a ghost town, my friend. Steelers are on their bye.
Yeah, post-game Monday night / Tuesday morning, I heard a lot of chatter on the field in terms of, players going away for the week or doing whatever. I know Pat's got a little trip planned, and then he's going to be at Ohio State, Penn State on Saturday as well. And he's very much looking forward to that. So, but anyways, yeah, that's cool. So speaking of the bye week and stuff, we were kind of sitting here. Listen, we got through an entire off season still doing the podcast on an every weekday basis. So we're going to be just fine for this bye week. But it was interesting. We have a conversation like, where do we want to go with the pod for a little bit here while this team does go through their bye week? And it's a good time, I feel like, while the team resets, for us to also reset, take a look at this thing, kind of by position, which we're going to go through over the next few days and just see where we kind of expected the position to be at, where they are at right now, expectations for the rest of the season, that type of thing. And Alan, over the last couple of days on your Morning Rush podcast, which, by the way, on the channel right here as well, go check that out if you've missed it. You've talked a lot about the quarterback position over the last couple of days. And I know that we had a question at the end of yesterday's episode regarding the quarterback position. But I guess, my mind has kind of been changed on this. So I feel like, that might be an interesting perspective to give on here, because I feel like there's a lot of people within the fan base that could probably say the same thing. Like one of your episodes was talking about who's the QB of the future. Doesn't matter. Like, who cares right now? You look around the league right now, the landscape of the quarterback position. Teams are either trying to win right now. Young quarterbacks stink. We just saw Anthony Richardson get benched in favor of Joe Flacco in Indianapolis. And I was somebody that wanted to start Justin Fields because I said the most important thing that could come out of this season, above all else, was finding out if we have a solution at the quarterback position for the future. And I felt like Justin Fields was, out of the two, the better one to offer that. Now, having said that, my mind has kind of flipped because I looked at the landscape of the NFL, where this team is right now. We touched on this yesterday, but obviously having Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, these type of players that are kind of like in win now mode, and you want to win for right now. Russell Wilson should be the starting quarterback of this team. He's shown that over the last few weeks. And compared to where I was at the beginning of the season, again, my mind has kind of flipped on that. I know that yours hasn't. So that was one thing where we kind of, I guess, differed. And I think a lot of people within the fan base are probably on both sides of that coin. But for me now, my mind has flipped, and I'm just curious to how many people in the fan base feel the exact same way.
Yeah, me too. And I'm also interested in this. And this is a good time, like you said, to kind of reset expectations and talk about like what we thought. Like, I thought all along that Russell Wilson would be better than Justin Fields. And I thought that because at the start, excuse me, could look at their numbers the last few years, and it was pretty clear that Russ had been the better player over the last couple of years. And then I got to OTAs and I got to training camp and I watched them work side by side, and I thought then that Russ would be the better player. And so it's very easy to compare A to B. Like, look at, here's Wilson's numbers, here's Fields' numbers, here's Wilson and Fields playing next to each other. I think this one's going to be better than that one. Like, if I'm getting that wrong more often than I'm getting that right, I probably should not have the job I have. Like, that's sort of like an essential part of what I'm doing here. But I'll tell you what's really hard is to say, like, okay, yeah, I think Russ is better than Justin Fields, but is Russ an all-pro, or is Russ the worst starting quarterback in the league? Like, I think without context, that projection is a lot more difficult. And I actually think both Steelers quarterbacks have played better than I thought they would when they got in the game so far this season.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I agree with that for sure. I think that there's certainly things about Justin that you've watched on tape of the last two starts that he made, where as a passer, you kind of saw, okay, this it looks like, some of the reasons that it didn't work out in Chicago and why we're in the situation that we are with him right now. But I think largely, him not turning the football over is probably the best indictment in terms of the leap that he took this year and really just kind of embracing what the Steelers were asking him to do, not to play hero ball and to just be that manager of the position that they needed him to be through those first 6 games. And on the other side of that with Russ, I mean, I think that you look at what those deficiencies were for the passing game, especially with those last couple of games for Justin, and then look at what Russ has done, and you see the leap there. That, like, we just talked about Calvin Austin having a breakout game, Van Jefferson having his best game of the season. And those things are happening because of Russell Wilson's play at the quarterback position, getting Darnell Washington involved more often, still getting George those deep shots down the field, and also what it's done for the run game. I don't think that it's a coincidence that the run game has taken the leap under Russ as well. So, I agree. I think both quarterbacks have definitely played better than I would have expected coming into the season.
We talked a lot this offseason about how, I didn't especially feel like these Steelers were set up to be true contenders. And I think, of the things that I pretty commonly listed, I think I said, I don't know if Arthur Smith is going to go back to being a top tier offensive coordinator. He had been that in Tennessee. He was not that while he was the head coach in Atlanta. What kind of offensive coordinator were the Steelers going to get with Arthur Smith? I thought that was a big unknown. I thought the quarterback position, again, was a big unknown. I thought that Russ would be at least average, but I didn't know if they were capable of more than that. And I thought the offensive line was also a big unknown just because of how young so many of the people that looked like they were core pieces were. And I feel like a lot of those questions have been answered and in a fairly positive fashion through the first half of the season. I don't think the Steelers have a top 5 quarterback situation. They probably don't have a top 10 quarterback situation. Although, as I'm saying this, I'm like trying to go through them in my head, and like they're certainly 10 to 15, right? They're certainly above average in terms of how I feel about their quarterback situation compared to the rest of the league right now at the midway point.
Honestly, even more impressive to me, and I know that we want to, not necessarily talk about this group right now, but just out of the things that you laid out, if you would have told me that this group was going to lose James Daniels and Troy Fautanu for the season, the offensive line that we thought would get better as the season goes on, I thought that would have derailed that from happening, those 2 injuries. But those guys have kind of, to their credit and to Pat Meyer's credit, I think as well as a coach, have kind of kept chugging along. I think that they've had their rough moments in pass pro. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about Broderick Jones, but for Ryan McCollum to step in and not be, so glaringly bad that it absolutely derails the offense, I think is a testament. A guy like Mason McCormick, who's a 4th-round rookie, stepping up in the way that he has. So to me, I think that's also an indictment of maybe them overachieving from where we expected them to be. But like going back to the quarterbacks and sticking within that conversation, yeah, like if you would have asked me preseason where I thought Russ would be, I would have said, he'll probably be somewhere between the number 18 to 25 starting quarterback in the NFL. And I think that he's definitely, again, through 2 games exceeded that. But even when you look at what Justin was giving them as well, I think he could have been in that conversation and showed that they could at least win games with him. Now, was he going to, I don't think he would have been the one that would have all of a sudden made me say, I'm changing my expectations now for the season, where I think, yeah, they should be favored to win a playoff game, go to the second round, yada, yada, yada. I think with what you're getting from right now from Russell Wilson and what this offense looks like, I think that could be where that shift takes place in terms of the season expectation.
Has the quarterback play for you changed your expectations right now? Like, do you think the quarterback play has been above expectations enough that one thing for you is like, oh, I think this team is better than I thought it was?
Yes. And I'll be honest,
Yeah,
I think he goes hand in hand too with me being very impressed by Arthur Smith and what he's doing with the offense that he has as well. Like, we keep
I'll say
harping
the
on
combination, and it's hard to separate those 2 things, but the combination of Arthur Smith in the quarterback position, I agree. I think this team is better than I thought it was.
Yeah, well, Yeah, but we keep harping on the wide receiver 2 thing, like or not even a wide receiver 2, just a wide receiver in general, them needing to add talent to that group. But like again, taking into consideration what he's had at his disposal, the weapons or lack thereof, what they've dealt with along the offensive line, and getting everybody kind of ingrained at the same time because there are so many new pieces this season, which is part of this as well. Yeah, I mean, I've been super impressed with what Art has come in and done.
Let's spin it forward. What do you think this Steelers quarterback room is going to look like going forward?
Just for the rest of
Like
the
the
season, you
rest
mean?
of the season. Like, what
Yeah.
are your okay? So they've been better than our expectations to this
Yeah.
point.
Mhm.
What do you expect the rest of the way?
Well, I guess that's the thing is like what's going to happen the first time that they do face adversity. Like not to say that they haven't faced, some in the form of the Jets and the Giants, but we haven't faced a divisional opponent yet. And I think the biggest question for me when it comes to Russ more so than just like performance is going to be health. Like can he make it throughout that's tough stretch the second half of the season and staying healthy. So, I mean, I guess my expectation is, I don't want to say that it's much higher than from what we've seen or what we've gotten so far to this point. It's probably within that same realm. I think that he can continue to do what he's done to this point through that back half of the schedule. But the other part of that is, again, we're operating under, like, I guess you kind of have to, like, this is just the roster that they have right now. So we got to operate under that assumption. But if they go out and get another weapon, maybe that kind of makes up for it, right? Like, yeah, the level of competition that they're going to face might be elevated as well, but they could also make an elevation of their own and be taken to another level with a player that they add. So, like, how do you equate that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they've played like great teams overall, but they've played some really good defenses. I know Ben
Yeah.
Roethlisberger made a point on his
Yeah.
comment about, I want to wait until the Jets are the number 3 pass defense in the country. Like what? Like I
Yeah,
don't know
there's
what
four of the
more
top
you need to.
on their schedule so far.
Now, they were banged up when they played them.
Mhm.
Like they were missing every starting corner besides Sauce Gardner, but it was still Sauce Gardner. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
I think there's a lot to like about the Steelers' offensive performance. And I think it's been a very like representative sample of opposing defenses. Like they've played some good defenses. I'm not thinking that they're just like this sort of easy schedule merchant where they just like beat up on a bunch of bad teams. I don't think that's what's happened so far. Now I do think they will play some better teams and the
Yeah.
teams that will be able to put them into some tougher game situations. They haven't trailed very much. I mean, outside of
Yeah.
Indy and Dallas, outside of Indy, they haven't really trailed at all. I mean, even the loss in Dallas, they weren't trailing,
Mhm.
for most of that game. And so they may get into some tougher game situations. There may be some teams that they have to keep up with scoring wise, and I'll be interested to see what happens if they get into a shootout with, say, the Bengals or something like that, where it's a team with a
Yeah.
high-powered offense, doesn't have a good defense, but you're going to have to keep scoring because they are. I don't know, but like I don't think what we've seen so far feels like it's unsustainable or anything like that.
You brought up Cincinnati. I was going to bring up Baltimore just because how bad their defense, secondary specifically, has been in the second half of games. And obviously, they just added another weapon, Deontay Johnson, which we talked about. But I wonder how much of Ben's mindset is just being a guy that played so much football in the AFC North. If when he says a statement like that, he's just thinking about like more so the division than he is the overall landscape of the NFL with how good defenses are. Like, do you think that might be part of it too? Because I feel like he just thinks like Ravens automatically, that's a tough defense. I have to see them against them first.
Yeah, the AFC North defenses are horrendous this year, except for the
Yeah.
Steelers. The Steelers
Mhm.
are the only above average defense in the division right now. And so, yeah, I think that's probably more about the reputation of those teams and the games that they've played than it is factual in terms of the 2024 NFL landscape, where those 6 games might be the easiest defenses the Steelers play all year. Like that, they're all bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you mentioned a shootout, and I was sitting here thinking, man, that one against Baltimore certainly could play out that way. But you threw out Cincinnati. I like that too. I actually, the Browns defense? What do you think the reason is that they've fallen off like that?
I don't know. I don't understand either the Bengals or the Browns defenses
Yeah.
being bad. I mean, the Ravens are banged up, I guess. It really doesn't make any sense for any of them to be that way. I don't get it. They have good players. I mean, It's not like they have like the Bengals have kinda, I guess, you know, you've seen the downward trend as they lost players and haven't really replaced them. Like they lost why am I blanking on the safety's name? Jesse Bates,
Just
and they
Bates.
never really replaced him, and then they took a step down, and now they've lost, some of their defensive line, and they haven't really replaced them, and they take another step down. You've kind of seen the decline. The Bengals has been more of a slow decline from that Super Bowl team to where they are now. The Browns and Ravens just fell off a cliff, and I don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Speaking of falling off the cliff, that's what people were expecting to happen to Russell Wilson. Do you have more to add about the quarterback position or?
Yeah, I the one thing I'm looking for from Russ that we have not seen, maybe we saw a little bit of it in this last game, is I'd like to see I'd like to see him use his legs as a weapon a little bit more. He's sort of gotten away a little bit, but I think he's more athletic than we've seen him show it so far. And then the second thing I want to see in the second half of the season that we have not seen yet is I want to see a package for Justin Fields. I want to see them use both quarterbacks, and I want to see them get his athleticism on the field. We're talking about the weapons situation at wide receiver. That guy's too good of an athlete for him to sit on the bench for 60 minutes a night. They got to find a way to use him wherever, however. I'm open to whatever Art Smith can come up with. But to me, those are the two things when I look at this team. Like, what do I want to see from the quarterback position in the second half of the season that I haven't seen so far? I want to see Russ use his legs a little bit more, and I want to see some way to get Justin Fields involved.
Yeah, that 1st and 20 run where Russ got 5 and then just slid was certainly interesting. But we'll see if they decide to break up late.
He could have got like at least 5 more.
Yeah.
That was extremely conservative. And then of course he fumbles later in the game. So not great there either. I think it could be a confidence in the leg thing that will need to grow over time. But I would like to see a little bit more Russ moving with the ball.
In regards to Justin, absolutely there with you. And I'm curious, like, okay, if he didn't have the hamstring pop up or whatever, would this have been a game to do it? But now you got the bye week and everything like that. Certainly could see it on the back half of the schedule. A player that we keep getting questions about in terms of are we going to see post bye was Cole Holcomb. So I think we could take it to the linebacker room now and see where we're at, because we've seen Peyton Wilson a whole heck of a lot more than I thought that we were going to. We've seen Elandon Roberts, obviously, Patrick Queen playing his role. What do we make of the linebacker room at this point in time? Where are we at compared to where we thought we were going to be before the season started?
Yeah, talked to Aaron Curry today. He said that Cole Holcomb is still rehabbing. The plan is still for him to come back this season. There is no firm time frame. I kind of along the lines of what I've been updating you guys with, that he is working out there at practice every day off to the side. It's just not at the point yet where he's ready to join the team. I feel like he is probably not that far from that point, just based on you see when Cole got out there and was doing stuff compared to like Dylan Cook, who has rejoined the team, or Tyler Matakevich, who has rejoined the team. And yeah, I know his injury was much more significant, but he was working before those guys were. And so I would think that we're not far from opening his practice window. If not, I mean, I would say it could happen any day. Like we could get get the tweet from Steelers PR that Cole Holcomb's 21-day practice window is opened, and there's a number of guys who I think you could say that about, but I don't get the sense that he's far away from making a return.
I mean, and that people are probably going to question, okay, what role is he going to have when he comes back? Does that take away from Peyton Wilson? Does it take away from Elandon Roberts? Does it take away from Patrick Queen? Or is he just a depth piece that you're happy to have, should we see an injury take place to one of those guys ahead of him? How do you envision that? Do you have any sense of what that could look like?
I think he will start out as mostly a depth piece. It's been a long time off. He's going to have to ramp his way up, but I would not hate the idea of giving Patrick Queen a few plays off. They've put an awful lot on his shoulders. I do not think he needs to play every single snap. And I think Cole Holcomb has the experience as a play caller, as a 3-down linebacker, to kind of do it all, like middle of the road skill set for the position that Roberts and Wilson don't really have, where if you wanted to get Queen some time off, he would absolutely be like the kind of obvious choice. So yeah, I think that would be the way I would use him at first, and then see where they go from there. But I think 10 or 15 plays off a game could be a really good thing for Patrick Queen.
Yeah, certainly lower the quantity and hope that the quality sees an uptick and just keep him healthy and fresh. Where'd you expect this group to be though before the season? Did you view them as a strength of this team? Do you think that they've lived up to that? Do you feel like there's a nice mix in terms of the skill sets that they have to complement each other? Where are we at?
Yeah, I'd say pretty much as expected for Peyton Wilson. Like probably like you, I think he's played more than I thought he would in that nickel package as the sort of pass coverage half of the linebacker split there with Elandon Roberts. Erob continues to impress me, man. His game is so good. He's just so good at what he does. Not slowing down at all. Probably above expectations for him again. The things he's done on the goal line have been impressive and fun to watch. Patrick Queen, I think I expected him to take some time to get used to the defense. I think the coverage has lived up to my expectations in terms of his coverage ability. Probably less so in terms of his tackling and his run fits. I think those have left some things to be desired. And that, I did expect him to have a learning curve, a build-up process. Linebacker is such an instinctual position. When you are learning a new scheme, it's hard to play it fast. You do need some time there. But I think on the whole, this unit is probably playing about the way I expected it to. But maybe Queen specifically, I feel like has more he can show us and more splash from all of these guys. Just not very many splash plays, even though I think overall they're playing pretty well as a unit.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is I don't think it's like we've seen them get exposed per se the way that we've seen in past years, where it's like, oh, that's where we're gonna target. Like teams can just throw at that second level of the defense and be able to stretch them out. And they won't be able to keep up. They don't have the athletes. Like I feel like they've kind of been able to mask that with the players that they have there now and been able to have a solution. But what you said about the splash, I think that's the first thing that I would say I was kind of expecting to see more of, whether it was Patrick Queen taking the ball away, which he's had a couple opportunities for interceptions. But like tackles for loss, we've seen some. Obviously, definitely thought that we'd see more plays around the line of scrimmage from him. Rob's obviously he makes a living in the backfield and stuff like that. Maybe I would have expected a couple more of those to turn into forced fumbles. Peyton Wilson, with the way that he's played in coverage, I thought he could maybe have a turnover here or there. So yeah, I just think that maybe the splash is probably the one area where I'm like, I thought there'd be a little bit more to give at this point in the season than what we've seen. But I'm not upset with the way the units played. Again, I think that they are much improved from linebacker groups of the past.
Yeah, and I think something that's gone into the lack of splash from the linebackers is how little they've blitzed. If you want your linebackers to be making plays in the backfield, you have to send them to the backfield. You can't expect them to be in spot drop zone and then be sacking the quarterback or forcing fumbles or making tackles for loss. If you're in spot drop zone, you're making tackles 7 yards downfield if you're making them. And so I think a lot of it has had to do with the way they've deployed their linebackers as much as it has had to do with the abilities or how those guys have played.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. So we'll see, what the second half of the schedule has to bring in that regard. But so would you say that you kind of expect to see more from that group? Because you're talking about now, like Peyton Wilson, obviously as a rookie, you would hope would progress as the year goes on. Patrick Queen continues to get more and more ingrained within the defense. Could we maybe expect more the second half? And then, I mean, Erob was obviously here last year, and I thought he played well above expectation last year. And I feel like the AFC North is kind of where he's going to thrive. So we haven't even gotten into the portion of the schedule yet where we really see Erob ball. So where are you at with them the rest of the way?
Yeah, this was a unit I always expected to be better in the second half than the first half. I still expect that. I think you would see Patrick Queen get comfortable with the defense, and I thought he would improve as the season went on. Obviously, you kind of expect all the rookies to get better as the season goes on. And I agree about Erob. I think they'll get Cole Holcomb back at some point. And I agree about Erob. I think, when you look at the teams you expect him to have a big impact against, most of them they haven't played yet. I mean, they are
Mhm.
mostly those sort of AFC North style teams. And so, yeah, I think Roberts' best games are going to be against run heavy teams like Cleveland and Baltimore. I think that's when he earns his paycheck. And, it's not his fault those teams haven't been on the schedule. But, yeah, I do expect more from the linebacker room going forward in the second half of the season. And, them getting healthy with Holcomb back. Tyler Matakevich hasn't been playing. He, I believe, will be back next week. They have some pretty solid depth there, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, let's just take it to the other part of the front seven. Then we talked yesterday, obviously, about the defensive line. Two guys along that, Cam Heyward, TJ Watt. Those are the reasons that you kind of buy into this group with what they have left, feeling like these guys are playing so well they deserve to be invested into at this trade deadline. So talking about that group, I mean, I feel like we expected that to be a strength for this team every single season. When you got TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith on the edges, when you got Cam Heyward, Keeanu Benton, and a healthy Larry Ogunjobi, with where they were at prior to the season, how do you feel like they performed?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like I keep asking like coaches and players like, "Are you surprised by Cam Heyward?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Yeah, neither was I." But I mean, a lot of people have been very surprised by Cam Heyward playing like an All-Pro. I think he is playing like an All-Pro. I think he's been the best interior run defender in the NFL, which at 35 years old is just bonkers to say. But he has been. He's been so good. I think Larry has had some good flashes. Probably his most consistent stretch of play since he's been with the Steelers. Not a ton of like, I mean, it's Steelers defensive line, man. They're not Splash is not their game, but I think Larry's been very consistent. Keanu Benton is a player that I had really high expectations for coming into the season, who I feel like has maybe just fallen short of where I thought he might be able to. I thought he was a player that would be able to contribute more sacks and force fumbles and things of that nature, and that hasn't really come to pass yet. And he also just isn't getting as much playing time as I thought he would earn. Thought we would
Yeah.
be seeing a lot more of Keanu Benton sort of taking those reps from Cam and Larry. But I think the older guys have kind of kept him at bay this year pretty successfully. Now, maybe as the year goes on, those guys get a little worn down. There'll be more 95 in there. But I think of those big three, Cam, I will say this. I still think Cam, but I don't know if it's ahead of my expectations, but I just think it's so impressive of where he is at this point in his career to still be as good as he is. And then Larry, I think definitely the most consistent we've seen him be. And maybe, maybe I think that there's still more to go for Keanu Benton.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting a massive leap this year from Keanu Benton, and not to say he hasn't played well, but it hasn't showed in the box score the way that I thought it was. Like there was a lot of plays last year that I thought on film were left out there that would turn into sacks this year. Like those pressures turning into sacks where maybe he was over pursuing a little bit, and I thought we would see an uptick in terms of that production. I feel like the run game stuff I thought has been very good from all those guys up front. There's a reason why they've been so good against the run largely this year. Obviously, Tyrone Tracy's had a very nice game against them on Monday night, but overall body of work what they've been able to do against the run this year. Larry Ogunjobi has stayed healthy, and I think that this is the best that he's looked and best that he's felt in a Steelers uniform. And while I'm with you in terms of people undervaluing Cam Heyward at this point in his career, I will say he's played above my expectation just because there was some concern for me, not because I doubted the player or anything like that. And it's not even so much his age. It's just the injury specifically that he was coming off of. And I know he was still good against the run last year when he played at whatever percentage he was playing at, but I questioned how much, burst there still would be, how much get off he would have, and if he would still be able to contribute that much as a pass rusher. And again, not that like the stats are necessarily piling up in that regard either, but he's still creating very uncomfortable pockets and creating interior pressure in a way that I wasn't sure would be there.
I think the most surprising thing about that is coming back from the injury, I wasn't sure if he would be able to play as much as he has. I thought he would have to be limited in how much he would play, and he really hasn't been. I mean, he's been playing basically his normal workload over the course of his career, which is really funny that Mike Tomlin cited Cam Heyward as someone who's playing less when he talked about benching George Pickens when he's 35 years old coming off an injury. And he's not really playing less. He's playing as much as he always has.
Absolutely. Alan, you know what? Actually, I feel like that would be a good point to stop. We can talk about the edge rushers leading off tomorrow's podcast and dive into a few more positions and stuff like that. But I think that's a good cutoff point. We talked about the interior, we talked about the quarterbacks, talked about the linebackers, kind of mixing it up with the groups that we're going to there, which again we'll continue to do through the next couple days as we are in bye-week season here on Steelers Afternoon Drive, just as the team is. But Alan, why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah, before that though, I want
Yes.
you guys to give us and maybe we won't do this tomorrow, so we'll give you 2 days. We'll do this on Friday, because Friday's our prediction day. We'll give you
Yeah.
2 days now, today and tomorrow, in the comments. Give us your updated Steelers season prediction. Where do you feel like they are? Like, what were you thinking before the season, and what are you thinking right now in terms of your Steelers season prediction? And then Smitty and I will do ours on Friday, at
Okay.
the end of this
I like
sort
that.
of series that we got going on here. And then, yeah, you can find me at @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can find all my work at SteelersNow.com, PGH Steelers Now on social media. And of course, like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing here on the YouTube channel, including my morning podcast. And it's a video from Zach Azani talking about Roman Wilson. There's going to be more trickling out over the next couple of days from today's final bye week availability. And then before you know it, we'll be back in regular season mode next Monday.
There we go. With hopefully a lot of bodies coming back for the stretch run. We know obviously Cam Sutton, Nick Herbert said he feels good about the possibility of being able to come back for that game. Zach Frazier, we're obviously waiting for, so we'll see how that all shakes out. But like Alan said, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Also, like Alan said, hit us in the comments with what you were at before the season, where you're at right now with your prediction for where the Steelers will finish at the end of the season, or a question for a future episode. Obviously, we appreciate those that come in as well. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, you can find us over there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Same place you can find us on TikTok, also Steelers Afternoon Drive. And you can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders and myself. Thanks for jumping in, taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.